Hello and welcome. My name is Tokebi Games. I am a former Roblox engineer and I will be teaching you how to develop game mechanics. In today's video, we're going to learn how to create a crafting system step by step. This system will let players take raw materials and combine them into new items, adding more depth, progression, and creativity to your game. The first thing we'll do is add a crafting bench model into your workspace. You can use any model you like. Next, select one of the parts inside your model, ideally the tabletop, and tag it as a crafting bench. After that, insert a proximity prompt into it. This will allow players to interact with the model. Now, under Replicated Storage, go to the Remote Functions folder and add a new remote function. Name it Craft Function. This will serve as the link between the client and the server, allowing us to initiate the crafting process and receive a response indicating whether it was successful or not. Still in replicated storage, let's open the loot folder and add a couple of items. The first one will be bread, and the second one will be apple pie. These will be the craftable items we're making in today's tutorial. Don't forget to configure their attributes just like we did earlier with all the other loot items. Continuing in replicated storage, open the configuration files folder and add a new file called craft_config. Just like before, our craftable items need configuration data, so the system knows what materials are required to craft them. Now, let's take a look at how the configuration file should look. This will define the recipes for our craftable items, listing the materials required for each one. As you can see, the config file is pretty simple. It contains the crafting recipes, which means each entry has the name of the item to be crafted, and inside it, the raw materials required along with their quantities. Now let's create a simple interface so we can interact with our crafting bench. Under Starter Guy, create a new GUI called Craft GUI. The structure will be very similar to what we've done before. We'll have a text box to display the item name we're going to craft, a craft button to trigger the action, and another text box where the recipe materials will be listed. Under the Craft GUI, create a local script called Craft Handler. Let's take a look at how it's structured and how it will handle player interactions with the crafting interface. This script is basically collecting all the objects in the workspace that are tagged as crafting bench. Remember, we tagged the benches earlier? Then, it sets up a loop that adds an action to each proximity prompt. When the prompt is triggered, the action opens the crafting menu and disables the prompt while the menu's open. Once the menu's closed, the prompt is reactivated. That's all it does. Now we need one more script on this interface to display the items that are craftable. We'll add this script under our scrolling frame and call it Craft Repeater. Let's take a look at what this script does. This script gets the craftable items from our craft config file and stores the recipes in a variable. Then, it populates the UI list layout with the recipes using a for loop. Remember, we also need to add an action to the craft button. This is where we invoke the craft function remote function we added earlier. For now, the result of the crafting action, success or failure, is just being printed. But ideally, you should show a prompt to the player instead. For the final part of this tutorial, let's add a script under Server Script Service and call it Craft Manager. This is where the actual crafting logic will run on the server, checking if the player has the required materials, removing them if the craft is successful, and then giving the player the crafted item. The server script is actually not very complex. We start by importing the craft function remote function, the craft config, to access our recipes, and the loop module we created at the beginning of the tutorial. Inside the craft item function, we receive the player, the item they want to craft, and the position of the bench. This is only so we can generate physical loot at that location. Using the item name, we pull the correct recipe from the config. If the recipe exists, we loop over the required materials and check if the player has the right quantities in their inventory. If at any point the requirements aren't met, we set a CanCraft flag to false and return a failure response. If all checks pass, we loop again through the materials and remove the used items from the player's inventory. At this point, you have two options. You can give the crafted item directly to the player's inventory, or, as I chose here, you can send it to the loot module for physical generation so the player has to pick it up. Finally, once everything is complete, we return a success response. Let's test our system. If I click on Sell Item, you'll notice my inventory is empty. When I interact with the bench, the recipes appear, but if I try to craft, it fails. because I don't have any raw materials yet. So let's go collect a few materials and try again. Now that I've gathered some items, we can see them in the inventory. Interacting with the bench again and crafting this time works. The items are successfully created. Once I close the menu, I can pick up the new crafted items directly from the world. You can have access to this file by following the link in the description to my GitHub repository. Also, please join my community on Roblox, Tokebi Academy, where you can have access to the demos and collaborate with me. If you have not done it yet, please take a minute to subscribe and like this video, as this will greatly help me to continue making this type of content. Thanks for watching, and hope to see your comments and suggestions.